to kind of keep an eye on it. Let's get into top 20 available players in the portal. Here's what we want to do. I understand how confusing this thing is, and as I said earlier in the show, we're in like chapter 2 of like 20 chapters on this thing. We don't know. We've got so many storylines and so many players going so many different directions, and we have less answers than we have answers at this point. We have no answers at all, basically. Very very low percentage on these guys, but we're going to go through, and we named a few of them at the top of the show. If you're watching this clip, you can go get the full version of this show on our page and hit the subscribe button while you're over there and give us a like. We really appreciate that. So the top 20 available players in the portal, according to 24/7, that's pretty much who we frequent. That their site is one of the best for sure. And 24/7 has done a really good job of over the last few years of developing their ability to see talent, and that's a trusted source for sure. Let's go through some of these. We talked about earlier in the show, Notre Dame has had a mass exodus at wide receiver this year coming out of that program. They got guys coming in and guys going out. Tobias Merriweather is one of those guys that's headed out. He's the first of several wide receivers to leave out of Notre Dame after the regular season, and the Irish are now they're depleted at that position. Bo Collins is a wide receiver from Clemson. He's committed to the transfer to the Irish and will be a building block for an overhaul at wide receiver. And Merriweather has got 2 years left of eligibility. So that kind of gives you a little glimpse into the Notre Dame wide receiver room. And we talked about also that Riley Leonard is going to be heading up the quarterback position there. What are your thoughts about Merriweather? I think this is a good piece for somebody. Collectively, the Notre Dame wide receiver room didn't work out very well, but I think that I think there was good pieces there. I just don't think it was the right mix and culmination of talents in that wide receiver room. A lot of receivers that I felt like had the same abilities and the same talents and didn't complement each other that well in that offense. What are your thoughts about Tobias Merriweather, and take us through the next couple here on our list?
Yeah, what's interesting to me is that he's rated this highly, by 24/7. To me, I think Chris Tyree is the bigger loss for Notre Dame statistically. So losing both of them though, I think is a huge loss, and I think that what we're going to see is a bounce back. Can you Notre Dame needs to kind of have addition by subtraction in this case, and take those two pieces out and upgrade their wide receiver room. If you're gonna spend big on Riley Leonard, you got to give him the pieces to help complement his game, because he needs as much as he can get in the passing game at this stage in his career. Number 19, we've got Julian Fleming, wide receiver from Ohio State. He was the number one wide receiver in the 2020 class. No idea where he's going yet. I think that, earlier we talked about Nebraska. It seems like a good fit for him. And we'll see if he's going to follow Kyle McCord to where he goes, or if Kyle McCord follows Fleming, however you want to look at that. But this is a guy who has a lot of meat left on the bone. I'm anxious to see what he's able to do as the premier wide receiver, obviously playing behind, guys like, Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka this past year doesn't help. He was probably about to get passed up on the depth chart by some freshman 5 stars that, Ohio State gets year over year. So I think it's a good idea for him, a good business decision for him to take the lessons that he learned at Ohio State and move to become the premier receiver at another, Power 5 school. And I think that if he does decide to go to Nebraska, he'd obviously be the number one receiver there, and pretty much wherever he goes. He has that opportunity to become the number one receiver. And I think he's ready for that. I think he's a good size receiver that can fit that X position pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Julian Fleming, I'm super interested to see where this guy ends up. That's a definite playmaker, a highly touted guy, as you said. Can't wait to see where he ends up. Uh, selfishly as a Georgia fan, I was hoping he was going to come to Georgia, but looking more and more like him and his quarterback Kyle McCord are a package deal. We'll see how that turns out. At number 18 on our list, we've got Dion Burks. This is a guy that most of you probably haven't heard of. Admittedly, I hadn't watched a ton of Dion Burks until we did some of the digging on this list here. And he's a wide receiver at Purdue. He's the number 3 wide receiver in the transfer portal class for 24 currently. And look, this is recorded on December 12th. So this is all subject to change, right?
Yeah.
But as of December 12th, he was considered to be um, the number 3 wide receiver in the transfer portal class. This guy is already draft eligible, but wanted to come back and play for a big time program, and I think that's very admirable. But I think you got to kind of know the backstory on Dion Burks to understand why. In 2023, he exploded for 47 catches, 629 yards, and 7 touchdowns. But before 23 season, he had never even scored a touchdown. And so Oklahoma and Texas are a couple of the blue bloods that are after him. It's going to be interesting to see where he ends up. I mean, yeah, water wet, fire hot. Texas wide receivers good, right? I mean, my God, if Texas gets one more awesome wide receiver, I don't know what we're all going to do. That would be a big get for them, no doubt.
Yeah.
Let's go to number 17. We talked about Riley Leonard earlier in the show, and what he's going to bring to that Notre Dame offense, and so we won't rehash that. This is a true dual threat quarterback that played under Coach Mike Elko at Duke, and obviously Mike Elko has gone to Texas A&M, freed Riley Leonard right on up, and he was predicted by us over a week ago to commit to Notre Dame, and he has done that. So this is a second year in a row that Marcus Freeman pulls a starting quarterback from the portal. He's really really good at it. He's recruiting well and hitting the portal really hard. And Notre Dame, as we said earlier, will need to continue to look for wide receiver help in addition to Bo Collins, who they recently picked up from Clemson. Number 16, we got a guy named R.J. Oben. This is an edge player from Duke. This was a really good defense last year. I mean, that's pretty much how the bread was buttered for Duke. It was all reliant on that defense and Riley Leonard on the offense. This guy is number 3 edge in the portal class, 6'4", 250-pound edge rusher. He decided to skip the Senior Bowl and come on back for another year of college football. This guy right here, I mean, everybody's after him. Tons of schools are pursuing his services, including USC, Oklahoma, Auburn, Notre Dame, Florida State, Penn State, and there was several others. I got tired of typing these things out. He's pretty much got a plate full of teams, and he just has to pick which one is his flavor. But he did actually visit Notre Dame last week, which it seems to be a very common trend among transfer portal players. Any thoughts on those guys, and then take us into number 15?
Yeah, I think Oben, right now he's a lean to Notre Dame based on what I've seen. Might be following his quarterback over there. What's interesting is that he's not really considering Texas A&M, even though Mike Elko is headed to Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Typically, you would think that, especially a defensive guy playing for a defensive coach, might want to follow his head coach to Texas A&M. I thought that was kind of interesting, but um, looking to see him go to Notre Dame at this point. Number 15, we've got Will Howard, quarterback from Kansas State, number 4 quarterback in the transfer portal. USC is in pursuit of him, which is a little bit odd given the quarterback talent that they currently have on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy though that's proven he's got more starts than all of those guys, right? So maybe they go for the veteran quarterback and let the younger guys beat him out, or not, or have sort of a high floor at quarterback in their quarterback room. Miami is the other school that seems to be in on Will Howard. But what's interesting, we'll get to another quarterback later on who's a little bit more highly sought after, who's also a Miami lean. So we'll just have to see who kind of wins that out, and then let the chips fall, after that. And then number 14, we've got Trevor Etienne, running back out of Florida. He's the number 1 running back by, I think, every transfer portal recruiting or transfer portal ranking standards, this guy's a stud. He's dynamic, and he played behind a pretty bad Florida line for the past few years. So I'm anxious to see where he goes. It sounds like UGA might be where he goes, at least early on. That's what we were thinking, but no announcement as of yet. We'll have to wait and see. But this is a guy. I mean, 8 touchdowns last year, 5.7 yards per carry. Really dynamic. Again, that was behind a less than adequate SEC offensive line. So, put him, pair him on a championship caliber team with a good, offensive line group, and I think that you're going to see a potential Heisman type running back.
Yeah, well, and that I think that's exactly what is going on with Trevor in this situation. It sounds from everything that I read, it sounds like Trevor wants to play for a contender.
Yeah,
He wants to play for some type of championship, and I think Georgia would be a good place to do that. Just as good as any place in the country right now, no doubt. This is a strong runner right here. Everybody remembers his brother that played at Clemson, legend there. This would be a big pickup for Georgia, who needs a little bit of depth in that running room. They're going to have to replace some stuff, and it was kind of a lackluster running room for most of the year as there were injuries in 23. So it would be a very much invited running back 1A for the University of Georgia. And just kind of going back, you had mentioned Will Howard, and you know we keep saying where there's smoke, there's fire. There's been a bunch of smoke at USC about getting a quarterback in there. So what is the deal with that? Because every quarterback, every high profile quarterback that I see, it has got some kind of rumor at first about USC. But we all know that isn't it Malachi Nelson?
yeah.
That's so. I wonder if it's not working out quite yet with Malachi Nelson. I think that's going to be something interesting to see, and we'll see how USC responds. We talked about Oregon taking Dylan Gabriel earlier. We thought that, and I'm kind of spoiling one of our players that's ranked here, but Dante Moore was leaving UCLA. We thought maybe he'd go to Oregon, and now I'm hearing stuff about him going to USC. So it's interesting to see USC maybe trying to hit the transfer portal for a quarterback. I find that interesting. Um, we'll keep it moving. Number 13 on our list, we've got um, Holden Stays. This is a tight end from Notre Dame. This is the number one tight end in the transfer portal class. He apparently enjoyed his trip to Rocky Top, Tennessee this past weekend and is strongly considering a move to Knoxville. He did not play in 23 for Notre Dame, but he was a highly touted prospect, and the Vols need a tight end badly after a recent decommitment earlier this month. We'll get into the recruiting stuff here in just a bit, and that is one of the topics that we'll discuss briefly. So this would be a big get, obviously, for Tennessee. They're needing a tight end here, and this is the number one available according to 24/7. So it'd be a big pickup for them. At number 12, we got a guy named Trey Moore. He's an edge rusher at UTSA. This is going to be a highly touted guy. And as you're going to see, edge rushers in the transfer portal, man, they pretty much just get their pick of wherever they want to go. If you're a highly touted edge rusher, you've got a home somewhere. This is one of the group of five's most feared defenders, Trey Moore is. Um, he's attracting a lot of attention for, as I said, from big blue blood schools, Texas, Alabama, LSU. These the last 2 years he has amassed 35 and a half tackles for loss, 22 sacks, and 104 total tackles at edge.
Yeah.
That is just extremely impressive at a UTSA school that's been pretty competitive. So he's currently crystal balled to Texas. So we'll keep an eye on that over the next week, and maybe whenever we come back on next Wednesday, we'll know if Trey Moore is officially headed to Texas. You want to take us into number 11, and you got any comments on those guys?
No, I know Trey Moore's about to make himself a ton of money, moving up,
He's about to make
and
him some oil money, sounds like.
good gosh, this was a recruit coming out of high school, no stars, right? And now he's listed as a 4-star on Three's transfer portal rankings, and
Anything is
value, yeah,
possible.
valued at $313,000 a year. So that's a pretty good payday,
Yeah.
for a a UTSA edge defender. Number 11, we've got LT Overton. This is a guy out of Georgia, who, you know, reclassed from 2023 up to 2022, was a 5-star defensive lineman. He's going to play the edge. And, you know, he was the number 1 overall player in 2023, reclassed to 2022, and was still a 5-star, which is really tough to do. But, you know, he's been playing at Texas A&M, and now, you know, his head coach is gone, so he's gonna look elsewhere. Right now, it seems like he's a South Carolina lean, but this guy could play pretty much anywhere he wants. It's probably going to be a situation where you just kind of have to name your price and roll with it. So if he does go to South Carolina, that would be a huge get for the Gamecocks and much needed on their defensive line. And then you've got Andrew Makuba, safety from Clemson. He's the number 1 safety in the class, and you know, this is a pretty good sized guy, 6 foot, 195. He's, you know, played a lot at Clemson, and it looks like he was a 2021 recruit, if I'm not mistaken. So still a little bit of time there. I'm not really sure where the lean is at this point, but you got anything to add on these two?
I just Andrew Makuba leaving Clemson kind of puzzled me. I didn't understand um, why he was leaving. He was considered to be the starter this upcoming season. Um, this one kind of sounds maybe to me like Makuba is putting his name out there and maybe trying to get him some NIL money. And hey, mad respect, if you're not getting, you know, your money or whatever, that's kind of how these guys get the attention. It's like, hey, I'm thinking about leaving to get this bag, you know. And then the school's like, well, we got a bag right here. It just so happens we dropped one over here for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested to see if Clemson antes up and pays him, or if he's genuinely looking to get out of Clemson. So that's something super interesting to take a look at. Let's keep moving, and we're going to try to get through these top 10 here a little quicker, because these are a lot more names that you know already, and names that are more talked about. Number 9, Juice Wells, Antoine Juice Wells. This was a guy who got his bag. We talked about making some money. He made a bunch of money in South Carolina, and he barely played last year. Played in like 3 games, but now he seeks a more lucrative NIL deal, and is currently crystal balled to Ole Miss, who um, you know what? Ole Miss is anteing up right now for some of these players, and the portal king Lane Kiffin told his fans after the Georgia game, you know, yeah, you want a team like that, then you're gonna have to buy the damn thing. Um, and it looks like the everybody's getting their checkbooks out. Um, Only played in 3 games, as I said, this past season. Texas and Ole Miss are the teams to watch here. Number 8, Chase, I don't know how to say this name. I always struggle with this one.
Santos.
Bizontis. Yes, I did it. He's an offensive tackle from Texas A&M. He's the number 1 offensive tackle in the transfer portal as of now. Again, I'll tell you this December 12th. That may change. Chase started in all 12 games for the Aggies this past season at right tackle. He's 6'6", 320 pounds. He's just one of the many guys that are exiting Texas A&M after the new coaching regime. He allowed 4 sacks and 315 pass blocking attempts this season. He has 3 years of eligibility left. So definitely a something that's going to be sought after. I mean, there's a lot of value here with this guy. His original suitors in his high school recruitment before signing with Texas A&M were LSU, Michigan State, and Rutgers. Be interested to see if Jonathan Smith can pick up where Michigan State had left off in his recruitment. Maybe they can get him out there to Michigan State. Who knows? This is something we're going to have to watch over the next few days. And I was number 7, Princely U. That's who I'm gonna. That's what I'm gonna call him, Princely U. You man, yeah. I don't name these guys. I just mispronounce them on the internet. Okay. He's an edge rusher from Florida, and look, this guy is a badass. I mean, I'm just here to tell you right now, this was a big loss for Florida. Um, He's a great defender. 11 and a half tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 39 tackles, and 17 QB hurries this past season. No predictions on his destination yet. Going to be interesting to see, though, because this was a guy that Florida was really counting on coming back. was a cornerstone of this defense. Got a lot of experience, obviously, as the numbers I just threw out to you, and those were all team highs for Florida on that defense this past year. Princely, you heading out. What are your thoughts on these, and then take us through the next few?
Yeah, I think, starting with Juice Wells at number 9, you know, South Carolina, it's tough for them to hold on to these guys, right? Um, he's rumored to be going to Ole Miss, and I think that would be a huge get for Lane and company at Ole Miss. But I know you said that there are no predictions at this point on 24/7 on three for Princely. You, they've also got him, rumored to go to Ole Miss. So another huge get for Lane Kiffin if he's able to pull both of these. And I think that getting both two of these top 10 players and maybe potentially even a Walter Nolan, who we'll get to here in a moment. I mean, gosh, three of the top 10 and in the transfer portal. I think we'd have to deem Lane Kiffin transfer portal king once again. Chase Bisontes at number 8. You mentioned. He's an offensive tackle from Texas A&M, but he's really more of an interior lineman. It's about 6'3" and a half, 310, 320 pounds. So he really kind of fits that interior more so than the outside as a tackle. But it looks like LSU is kind of the front runner for him, and that would be a huge get for the Tigers, as well as like you mentioned, he's got 3 years of eligibility left. He was out there playing as a true freshman
Mm-hmm.
in the SEC, which is really kind of makes you a badass, in a lot of ways. And we've seen plenty of freshmen interior or freshman linemen in general, offensive linemen who play in the SEC go on to become first round draft picks. So I think that's a really big name to watch in this class. He'll probably get a little undervalued because of his position, but I think that he's probably one of the biggest names in this class at this point. Moving on to number 6, we've got London Humphreys. He's a wide receiver out of Vanderbilt, and he's the number one wide receiver on 24/7's recruit or transfer portal rankings. So this is a guy, he's 6'3". He had 439 yards last year for Vanderbilt. He was one of their two, top wide receivers, him and Will Shepherd. Interesting to me that Will Shepherd doesn't have the higher ranking here as a transfer portal target because they're both in the transfer portal. But I think that London Humphreys is a quick guy who has a lot of good size. I mean, he's 6'3", and in high school he ran a 10.6 800-meter. This guy can fly. And I'll be anxious to see where he goes. It looks like UGA is kind of leading for him at the moment. But we'll see. There are other. I think he's going to stay in the SEC from everything I've seen. But I would certainly, as a Bulldog fan, love to see him play for Georgia because I think that he's a big target with a good attitude who can also go out and block when you ask him to. At number 5, you've got Cam Ward, quarterback out of Washington State, number 3 quarterback overall. He's undecided on the draft, but it seems like he's kind of dipping his toes in the transfer portal market. I think that Miami is the biggest suitor for him at the moment. But he's also mentioned wanting to stay on the West Coast at one point. So I think that Washington would be a fun fit for him. And Miami might be sort of the business decision, going to get the bag sort of deal there. But I couldn't blame him for going to for wanting to go to Miami and play in that beautiful weather there as well. But you got anything to add on these two?
No, Cam Ward is definitely one that's interesting to me. This was not a highly touted recruit here, but he has definitely played his way into a situation where he can get some money. I definitely don't think he needs to be going to the NFL quite yet. We saw some through the middle part of the year some situations with him that he didn't look as good, but I mean 3,732 yards and 25 touchdowns through the air in 23 is pretty damn impressive. Um, and again, USC popping up on this list here as a possible candidate. It will be very interesting to see where Cam Ward ends up. He's a very talented athlete and a lot of fun to watch. So going to be interesting to see where he ends up. Number 4, Nyland Green, he's a cornerback from UGA. This is the number one cornerback, should I say, in the transfer portal class. He was a 5-star recruit from the 21 class. Um, he couldn't quite crack the lineup at UGA the past couple of seasons, and now he's going to move on to another school. So no predictions for Green yet. Maybe you've got some predictions, Mason, on Nyland Green as we climb into the top 5 of the you know best available players here in the transfer portal class. And my first thought on this was maybe he goes out to Syracuse and he follows Fran Brown out there, who was his cornerbacks coach at UGA. I'm not sure what that relationship's like. I haven't heard that. That was just my initial thought. Have you heard anything on Nyland Green?
I haven't. That would be an interesting choice for him. You mentioned it though. This guy was pretty much just a special teams player for Georgia the past few years. I remember his recruitment, and gosh, Georgia really wanted him. And he kind of
Hmm.
completed that class in a lot of ways, and just never really matriculated. He's always seen the field. The past couple of years. Um, a true freshman. Even you saw him out there, but never really was able to crack the starting lineup. And Georgia has recruited DBs out the wazoo. I mean,
Mm,
better than any team in the country the past 3 seasons. So it's not a knock on him to say that he couldn't start at Georgia.
right.
It's he's still a very good player, and he's probably going to play in the NFL one day. But that's why he's the number 4 overall player, left in the transfer portal market. So I'm anxious to see where he goes. I also don't have any leans, but I think Syracuse would be an interesting fit. I did see that Fran Brown got one of the Georgia wide receivers, Jackson Meeks, to follow him to Syracuse. So at least one Georgia player is going to follow a coach that maybe he had a relationship with in some capacity to Syracuse and play in that cold weather. But yet to see if Fran Brown's going to be able to get one out of his own coaching position or not. Number 3, we've got Dante Moore. We already talked about him a little bit. He comes out of UCLA, and he had to play as a true freshman this year. I don't know what you can really draw from his first year playing. At UCLA, this was a guy who was rumored to be going to Oregon up until signing day, and then decided to go to UCLA kind of at the last minute. So it was a huge get for UCLA at the moment or at the time, and he struggled this year, but he's a freshman 5-star quarterback, and
Yeah.
I don't. Not everybody's going to come out there and look like freaking Trevor Lawrence, so it's not a big deal for a freshman to struggle. There's usually a huge learning curve from year 1 to year 2, and even from year 2 to year 3 for quarterbacks specifically. So I don't think that that's a knock on him. I'm anxious to see where he goes. I think that Michigan would be a good fit, given that he's from that area. But right now, Michigan State is kind of the more favored team in his state, and Miami once again is in on another transfer portal quarterback that they're going in pretty hot with 3 of the top 10 names in the country. So I think that seeing who Miami ends up getting, if they don't bring in 2 of these guys, will really dictate how the rest of the things fall. And how other teams attack the quarterback position specifically. And then number 2, and I'll let you do number 1 here, but Aiden Chiles, a quarterback from Oregon State, must have been a highly sought after guy. He was a 4-star coming out of high school and was kind of put behind DJU, which is not a knock. DJU had all the experience last season, so this is a good get this will be a good get for any team in the country next year. And it looks like he's looking to maybe go play with his former ball coach Jonathan Smith, another quarterback that Michigan State is sort of after at this point in time.
Yeah, I thought that one was super interesting. I didn't know much about this guy, but apparently Oregon State fans certainly did, and we're excited to see him be able to play. But he is in the transfer portal, and it'll be interesting to see which one. You talked about Dante Moore being from Detroit and everything. It'll be interesting to see what quarterback Jonathan Smith ends up getting out of the transfer portal, just like he did at Oregon State with DJU. So um, these coaches that keep going to this well for these big time players, we'll see if they continue to be successful. Number one on our list right now for the top 20 available players, Walter Nolan is a defensive lineman from Texas A&M. Obviously, the number one ranked defensive lineman available. Uh, Look, there's a bunch of programs after Nolan at this point for obvious reasons. Big, huge humans that can play the interior of defensive line. They don't grow on trees, and so there's only a select amount of these guys. He's going to get a bunch of money thrown at him. Um, he's a rare commodity, as I said, and he just visited Oregon this past weekend, so that'll be interesting to see if he follows some of these other guys out to Oregon and Eugene to play for Dan Lanning, who is a really really good defensive mind. Tennessee Vols actually finished runner up in his initial recruitment. So we'll see if he gives Tennessee a visit, or if that's something that he's still interested in. And I wanted to add this list was made, and then a guy went in, and as I said here on December 12th, all this may change. There may be other players that come available, and there's obviously other good players in the portal. This is just the top 20. But Lance Dixon was a safety from West Virginia. This guy was originally like rated like a 98. He was a highly sought after 5-star that signed with Penn State and then transferred to West Virginia and had been at West Virginia for a little while. And now he's back in the portal. Very, very highly rated guy from West Bloomfield, Michigan. And no crystal balls on that yet.
Another Michigan guy though. Maybe Jonathan Smith has a has an inside track on a player that I'm sure he'd love to add to a pretty bad defensive secondary for Michigan.
Yeah, yeah, it was, and it's hard to even tell what Michigan State had because I mean, gosh, they were just in give up mode the whole year. That was just a horrible, horrible year that I know Michigan State fans are ready to move right on past. And all of the college football community is ready for Michigan State to be decent at football again. No doubt about it. What are your thoughts on Walter Nolan?
Well, I mean, obviously he's a tremendous talent. Guy's going to go in and make at least $500,000 this year, if not more. They just you don't you can't find defensive linemen like this everywhere, right? They're specifically in the SEC. So I think that Oregon makes a lot of sense for them to go out and get this guy. They got Birch last season out of South Carolina. So I'm anxious to see if they're going to go get another big guy, and I, too, I think that Ole Miss is another one who makes a lot of sense. I mean, they did pretty well against the run last season, but obviously, obviously Walter Nolan can go anywhere he wants. Like realistically,
Yeah,
Georgia would offer him, and it's just a matter of whether or not. And I think that with Walter Nolan and not a knock on him at all. I think that it's really going to come down to NIL and who's able to pay the most, just given who this recruit has kind of shown himself to be through his high school recruiting and now as a transfer portal target. But I think that Ole Miss and Oregon are the ones to watch on that one.
yeah, absolutely. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put on the top 10 transfer rankings